So let's start with from legality to political accountability. You know, Kanu faces life for incitement, yet many who kidnapped and killed remain untouched, with facing no consequences. How do you explain this double standard?
Well, I have had a lot of conversation about Nnamdi Kanu's situation, including revealing to the Nigerian people that his trial was pre-planned. Everything that eventually played out on the day of his conviction had already been exposed by me on November 5. Maybe we are only lucky that we fought a bit through the Free Nnamdi Kanu protest to have saved Nnamdi Kanu from the hangman's noose. They were going to sentence him to death. That was the plan. And you can check my Twitter and Facebook posts on November 5. Because I was giving that information in advance. They also, as a result of that, got very upset that we had a protest in Abuja. They shot at us, tear gas, arrested his lawyers, myself, later, and took us to the court outside of, within Abuja, but, near Kuje, and sent us to prison for 4 days. After we were granted bail on a Friday, the judge who was supposed to sign off on our bail paper ran away. He didn't come back until Monday. They were already setting the agenda for Nnamdi Kanu's conviction, or whatever they were going to do. But when they realized that maybe this is not popular or not going to be popular, they kind of pulled back a bit and did the life imprisonment. And they have also realized that even the life imprisonment has not stopped his life, or the life of what he stood for. Because it came at a time that, like I've always said, he prophetically predicted some of the things that are happening in Nigeria now. And when he was eventually convicted, those things have come full circle in terms of terrorism, the unchecked activities of the people you call terrorists or bandits who have been given preferential treatments in Nigeria over time. They always have the right, they can drive around in their convoys with vehicles seized from the Nigerian army. One of them wore a uniform of a police commissioner, an assistant police commissioner he killed. He wore his uniform to town. They were carrying their magazines and their heavy-duty weapons and ammunition and addressing press conferences. I insist that till date, the only evidence that was adduced against Nnamdi Kanu in his trial, the whole trial, was that he had a microphone and he had a radio transmitter and his underwear, both top and bottom, that he found in a hotel. Every other evidence the claim was against him were things that were circumstantial. Oh, he said that the people should kill police even when he was not in the country. Oh, he was the one who made NSAS to become what it is. But there are celebrities in Nigeria who claim they started NSAS. I started NSAS in Abuja. And I was one who gathered a lot of people that joined NSAS by calling them individuals, some of the celebrities. So if those ones are being celebrated for doing NSAS, why is Nnamdi Kanu being sent to prison for life just for speaking on the day of NSAS to say, oh, do this or whatever they said he said? So everything they accuse him of are things that they had no evidence caused any problem that they adduced caused. They even accused him of killing Gulag while he was in detention. I know something about being in DSS detention. You have zero access to communication. Even if you smuggle something, and they have a way of monitoring you. So how could somebody like that be sentenced to death? And the terrorist from one of the Boko Haram commander was sentenced to 20 years in prison. That is why Nigeria is where it is today. Some people in our animal farm, some animals are superior to others. And until that is addressed, until the justice applies to everybody in Nigeria, you are not going to get peace without justice. That's what so many of us have been saying, whether you like to hear it or not. But I feel it has come full circle now, that even those who felt like they can bamboozle others by saying, oh yeah, he did this, he's a bad person, they are now dealing with the real bad people. Unfortunately though, those real bad people have cover. They have immunity.
Okay, we're going on a break right now. We're still going to continue this conversation because you're digging right deep into it. So we're going on a break right now. We'll see you right back on Perspectives. Grab a cup of tea, as I always say, and see you soon. So now we have Jimmy in the house. So let me ask you, Jimmy, many Nigerians believe Kanu's sentencing was influenced by ethnic bias and not the law. Legally, how do you interpret that perception, and what's your position on it?
Yes, thank you very much for bringing up this topic. One thing people need to understand is that it's not necessarily that other considerations would have come into play in a decision of court if somebody does not succeed in his case being upheld or in his defense being upheld. I know that there's that perception out there, but before you can conclude on what actually transpired in the judgment, it will be important for anybody who wants to comment on it to read the 144-page document, judgment of the court, to be able to understand the decision of the court and how the court arrived at its judgment. You may not necessarily be satisfied with the judgment, but that does not ordinarily on its own, on its face, impute ethnic reasons or other not less noble reasons for the decision.
Okay, so let's get back to Sowore in the house, please. Some say Southeast power brokers and not the presidency are the ones driving Kanu's continued detention. So how is this shaping regional politics, and what should Nigerians expect in 2027?
Let me first state this. Yes, let me first state this, that I'm not here to find ethnic differences, but I have said, and I will state here, that Nigeria has an Igbo problem. And this, of course, emanated historically from the Civil War, where we claim that it was no vanquished and no victor. But ultimately, there was a vanquished person. If you had 10 million naira before the war, you are giving 20 naira after the war. You are the one vanquished. If they said to you, you cannot be promoted in the army because you can't be trusted, you are the one vanquished. If you cannot get promoted within the civil service because you can't be trusted, you are the one vanquished. To come to your question, and just to say that anybody who says that an Igbo man is not treated differently is just lying. That's the truth. Well, all of us know this. That's a big elephant in the room. And that is what I said earlier when I said, well, there's a Boko Haram guy who has been killing, beheading people, and he was sentenced to 20 years. And the guy who uses the microphone and the radio transmitter is sent to prison for life. They could have sentenced him to death if something hadn't taken place. Then to go to your question about the issue of how the regional power brokers behaved. I was in the midst of it. I was the one calling them up for protests. And I knew what I went through in the hands of the governors, House of Rep members, senators in the Southeast. They all flatly and vehemently, without speaking, refused to encourage their people to participate in anything that could peacefully. It was a peaceful protest planned. So who did we rely on? We relied on those in the markets to close down their markets. But the major leaders, including the deputy speaker, he came out shamelessly asking that the Igbos should sit at home and you should show that you are cowards. There's no cowardice in peaceful protest. The reason is that they believe that Nnamdi is too powerful politically, and that if he's released, he will have some impact on their political influence and popularity in the zone. They know that they are not popular, but they have all relied on the center to get whatever they want, to keep control over the southeastern political people. And they know that they are running out of time. If Nnamdi Kanu is released, that will not continue. We no longer enjoy what they are enjoying now. Whatever it is, whether it is fake or real popularity or power, they will lose it. They know it. Because I will reveal to you today that one of the biggest issues with the Nigerian state and Nnamdi Kanu is that they couldn't get him to promise that he would renounce his agitation for Biafra. That's the biggest problem. That was his main crime. They said it, if they even proposed to me that I should go tell him to enter his defense, and if he enters his defense, then if they release him, he should promise that he will form a political party and participate in politics. And if he can do that, they will have no problem with him. He said, no, I want the Biafran, I want my region to be different from Nigeria, because Nigeria doesn't, cannot support our aspiration for greatness. Now, my caveat is that I am opposed to breaking up Nigeria. I'm a Pan-Africanist. But I have seen, read, and known that it is not a crime for people to seek self-determination. So, the regional leaders we are talking about, I called all of them, I called all the governors, at least I know Soludo. I used to be able to reach him. I mentioned here that the governor of his state, Abia, was calling me as a reporter. So I called a lot of them. No one of them picked my call. No one of them has called me back, because what we want is not what they want. They want what they call a political solution. A political solution is that you jail him first, and then we beg you to free him on certain conditions. So that tag of ex-convict, they wanted it badly. All of them are agreed on that. The question is, how did they release him? Nobody can tell you when they release him. They don't plan to release him because of his refusal to endorse their political agenda in the Southeast. That is the problem. They don't want to hear his name. But the people of the Southeast, the regular people, are in love with him. And we've seen that with what happened in protests, how markets were closed across the country without a whimper. And they still are going to fight to ensure that Nnamdi Kanu is free. I will still fight to ensure that Nnamdi Kanu is free from this unjust incarceration into which he's been thrown. And don't forget, and I'll say this in closing, that this is the same way Ken Saro-Wiwa was treated in 1995, this 2025. I guess every 20 years, or is it every 30 years, Nigeria needs a victim, either in prison or in the Golo time. And guess what? It happened in November 2025. Ken Saro-Wiwa was November 1995. 30 years later, the country hasn't learned its lessons.